as I'm falling all over the place. Falling head over heels for a narcissist, maybe. Part 3, how to attract a narcissist. This one is to how to maintain them. How do we keep them around? We all want to keep them around, right? So the first thing is love the children to the highest extent. Give the kids all the love from you, as well as all the love they should be giving from the narcissistic parent. We all know that sometimes narcissistic parents make their kids source as well, and they take and take and take from their kids, or they neglect to give them their needs in the love department. They don't give them affection and praise and that time and interaction. So go ahead and give that to their kids. Sacrifice, especially if they're not biologically yours. Make sure that you are doing everything for them. Buying their uniforms, their school pictures, going to all their events. Love them up. I am by no means saying do not love kids that are not yours or that are yours, but we got to be careful that we're not doubling it up and compensating for the negative from another parent, because it will deplete you to the fullest. Especially, sometimes you could even start love bombing on your own without realizing it, and you start giving these kids way more than they should be getting because you feel bad. So you may be buying them extra things or stretching yourself too thin financially or with your own time. And it's great to sacrifice for your kids, but not when it sacrifices self. You have to be really careful of this balance. But if you want to keep the narcissist around, make sure that you are doing their job as well as yours in the parenting department. That really gets them. As well as become Cinderella. Make sure that you start obtaining Cinderella syndrome, as I call it, where you are cleaning and cleaning and tending to the household until, again, you are exhausted, because that's what you do day in and day out. You start to lose any identity of what yourself used to be, and you literally just become Cinderella. You become someone who people once knew, who used to have a family, who used to have friends, who used to have a life, and now you're just in four walls. You're within the home, and that is your identity now. Your identity is homemaker, period. Whatever that looks like to you, you, without realizing it, no longer are going out with friends, no longer going out with family. You may become so isolated that you do not have access to your phone or a vehicle anymore. This actually happened to myself, and it was such a slow process, I didn't even realize that it happened, which sounds crazy unless you have lived it. And it is not crazy, because narcissists are kind people, especially in the beginning. They're really nice. They're usually smooth talkers, and their words fall off like honey, and they just flow like sugar rivers. Like you just buy right into it. Like it's so amazing and so wonderful. You believe everything that they say, but their actions don't match up as time goes on, and they disappear typically pretty slowly. So you don't realize that these changes and transitions even took place because it can be so subtle. We all grow, we all change over time. So a lot of times we just think this is normal human evolvement, or maybe things getting comfortable or laxed or neutral or not being so spiced up or whatever it is. But really, it's the narcissist coming to life and coming too late. And so with mine, I ended up not having a cell phone because mine broke. And there was always an excuse as to why we couldn't go get one. Let's wait and put it on this plan. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then more bad stuff started to happen during that time, and I became more mindful of it. You know, like, this is interesting because now I'm being pinned down on the couch and not allowed to leave, and I have no way to call for help. And then a little time goes by, and the same thing happened with my car. I had two vehicles at the time. I owned both. He drove one, I drove the other. My car that I drove started to have problems and issues. He needed his vehicle to be able to go to work, aka laying carpet at a strip club. A lot of irony in this one. And then he was actually cheating on me with one of the strippers there. So he needed the vehicle to be able to take her places and go back to her place while he was on the clock. So the car broke down for me. He's, having a life of his own, living the single life, dating a stripper, while I am literally trapped at home. not believing that this is now my life. And I found out because he accidentally answered the call while in line getting coffee with his new little friend. In my vehicle. It was my vehicle. And I had a mental breakdown, wanting my car back. That was my breaking point. I couldn't handle it anymore. I realized in that moment how entrapped I made myself. And over time, I had to take accountability for myself that I was attracting in the narcissists and I wasn't standing ground for myself. And even though it's never anybody's fault to get into these, we also have to be mindful of how we got there to prevent getting into it again, because we cycle back into this repetitive cycle of trauma cycling and abuse, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more in a different video. And what does all this trauma lead to? It leads to depression. So if you want to keep these narcissists, right? You want to keep them, you want to maintain them, you don't want them to leave, start getting depressed. Diminish your self-worth. Make sure you're lifting them up on that pedestal like we talked about. Empower them, strengthen them, support them in everything that they do. And sit back and see if they're doing that for you. Most of the time they aren't. And as time shifts, most of the time you're going to hear more slander about yourself and never a compliment unless you're lucky, and you might get some of that love bombing. I know in my experience, very rarely did I actually get love bombing, and I might have thought that it was love bombing, but it wasn't even equal to a normal relationship's kindness. It was few and far between, long periods of time before any kindness was happening in most of these relationships. This specific one that I mostly talk about was heavy love bombing in the beginning. This guy was too good to be true. His friends warned me about not breaking his heart. But it was all fake. It was all false. And he was highest level controlling. So you do end up getting depleted in this process of control, this process of manipulation, and your self-esteem dumps into the dumper because these people were so kind. His friends warned me not to hurt him. You do start to question whether it's something you're doing. And then the narcissist will tell you it is something you're doing. You made me do this because you did that. Or I only act this way because you such and such. They always find a way to twist it back on you and deplete that self-esteem. You might be lifting them up at work and helping them with that promotion. If you're going to be promoted, they're going to turn that TV on. They're going to flip the channel. They're not going to engage with you, and they're sure as heck not going to support you. They are not going to take the time to lift you up. They're not gonna comment on your crap on Facebook and say, I'm so proud of my wife. If you're empowering yourself on there, they're gonna be like, what, is this all about you? Or they're just gonna scroll past. I know that's my experience. They see your face on there and they're like, I already live with you. I don't need to support you. I don't need to pump you up. And they won't do it in person either. You can tell them how handsome they are. You're so handsome. You look so great in that today. You spend an hour getting ready. They don't bat an eye. They don't say anything. They don't say how appreciative they are for you, let alone how beautiful you are. So you have to start doing that for yourself, okay? Start doing that for yourself. Unless you want to keep them around, and then let your self-esteem go into the dumps, because it will entrap you. You will not be able to leave if you get your self-esteem too low. You will not have the power within yourself to be able to do it. That's one thing people can be cold-hearted about. You should have just left. It's your fault you stayed in there. Never your fault. Never your fault. Sometimes our souls are too heavy to get out. So the next one, react in anger. Make sure you do that if you want to maintain them. The more you react in anger, especially towards the end stages, the more they're going to use that against you with their friends. They're going to start dropping their little trigger words, banana bread, right? And if you've been through it, like, banana bread's no joke, or something about blue shirt, something or other, or your middle name. It could be anything. And the people on the outside aren't going to understand it, but there might have been a traumatic incident or traumatic hurtful words that happened around making banana bread, or discussing banana bread, or watching a TV show where somebody is making banana bread. Something in your life encompassed this, right? And then they're going to remember, you got really hurt